Hello everyone, my name is Christian. I am with the Lohman Planetarium, part of the Museum of Arts and Sciences, and in today's show we're going to bring you something a little bit different. Now I'm sure you're familiar with our Sky Tonight series where we take a look at many of the awesome objects in our nighttime sky, but in this show we're actually going to focus on a particular time and region of space, and that is the early morning. So around 5:50, which is where this show is set to as far as the time. And we're going to be bouncing around a little bit, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the most notable things within that early morning sky. So mainly what's out in the very early morning or right before dawn. We have 3 planets and even coming up soon a meteor shower. So we're going to be talking about a couple of these things. And so as I said, this is set to the early morning. So if you're an early bird, and you like to get up pretty early, or you might have to because you have to go to work, or you like to work out in the morning, maybe go run on the beach or something like that. This is an awesome opportunity not only to do those things, but to enjoy what's in our nighttime sky. And so let's take a look at what's in our nighttime sky, mainly directed towards the south. We have 3 objects over here in the southeast, a little bit towards where the sun will rise in the next hour or so. And so we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars, most notably. You might have already noticed these 3 very bright star-like objects that are actually kind of aligned in this kind of imaginary line. It's not a coincidence. They're actually part of what's called an ecliptic path here. This is the relative path that the sun travels throughout the day, and then the planets and even the moon travels throughout the day and night. Now the moon's not going to be out this evening. This is set to the 22nd. This is actually the day of our new moon. And so the moon's actually going to be in the daytime sky very close to the sun. So as the sun's rising, the moon's going to rise along with it. But for the evening right before that sunrise, we have these 3 awesome objects. We also have a meteor shower coming up soon, the Eta Aquariids, and that's going to happen from April 19th through May 28th. With a peak of May 6th. So if you want to check that out, it's coming up very soon. Let's take a closer look at some of our planetary objects, though, that we have here in the south. Notably, Jupiter is going to be pretty bright in the southeastern sky. If we get a little bit of a close-up view of it, we can take a look at not just Jupiter, but the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter, Europa, Ganymede, Io, and Callisto. If you had a telescope, fairly decent telescope, you'd be able to make out not only the fantastic weather bands of the planet Jupiter, but these 4 Galilean planets. And in fact, if you wanted to observe these long enough, you could see them even make a orbital period around Jupiter, and so you can see them gradually shift as they orbit this planetary body, which is a really cool thing to observe, much like how Galileo observed it many years ago. And so we have that available in our early morning sky as well. Now Jupiter is pretty far away. It's actually around its average distance from us, around 482 miles away, 82 million miles, my apologies, away from us. But much further away is Saturn. Now they do look close together in our nighttime sky. This is a relative thing. They just kind of appear closer together. In fact, later on in the year, they will appear even closer together. This is known as conjunction, when 2 planetary objects appear right next to each other in our sky. But once again, that's a perspective thing. Saturn is much further. In fact, it is the furthest object in our solar system that you can observe without the use of a telescope. Anything further, Uranus, Neptune, and the dwarf planets are much too far away. Saturn is around 932 million miles away right now, so very far. But this is how it would look if you were able to observe it with a telescope. You can see here we have, of course, that beautiful ring giant Saturn. You can even make out the ring with a telescope, and you can even make out 2 of the moons, actually, of Saturn. Most notably the largest moon of Saturn, Titan. Incredible object to see. This is my favorite object in our solar system, of course, beyond our own planet Earth here. But the interesting thing about it is that Titan shares a lot in common with Earth. Titan is the only moon in our solar system that has an atmosphere. And not only that, it is a nitrogen-rich atmosphere, a little bit like ours. There's a lot more, there's a higher nitrogen concentration on Titan than us, of course. but it has that atmosphere, and that's really cool to observe. So if you see Titan out there with Saturn, you are looking at an object that has an atmosphere, a moon that has an atmosphere right next to this magnificent gas giant. Last in our planets that we can see in our early morning sky is Mars, the closest of which for our early morning sky, while Saturn was very, very far at 932 million miles away. Saturn is only 124 million miles away. So a bit closer, but in relation to its kind of orbital period, it's actually a little bit on the further end of things. Mars can be anywhere from around 40 million miles away from us to anywhere or around 20 million miles away to 140 million miles away in any given time. And so it's a little bit further on that spectrum for us. But if we were to get a little bit closer, we can make out Mars, a beautiful red planet with its two moons, Phobos and Deimos, aptly named as they are the sons of the Greek god of war Ares. Of course, the Roman correlation for that is Mars. I want you to keep that name in mind, Ares, the Greek name for Mars, as we zoom back out. Because we do have a star outside in the early morning that is similar in name and along the same path here, that ecliptic path, that relative path. This isn't traveling on that path, it just happens to be there. And ancient civilizations noticed this, especially when Mars was a little bit closer to this object, because Mars can be a little bit closer or further away from Antares, and to differentiate between the two, because they are both red in color. Mars, of course, is the red planet, and Antares is a red supergiant star, so they will appear red in the sky. They name one not Mars, or Antares, and then the other one Ares, or Mars. So kind of a cool little factoid that you can keep in mind. So if you see Antares out there as well in the southern sky. One last thing to note of our early morning sky is actually a meteor shower that's going to be coming up very, very soon. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. The Eta Aquariids meteor shower that's going to be prominent in the sky from April 19th through May 28th. So be on the lookout for that. It is an early morning occurrence to observe. So around this time, you'll be able to see kind of the peak of that meteor shower right before sunrise. And so this is set to an hour before sunrise. So go out there around this time, and in that window, you'll be able to see this meteor shower beginning in that window. The peak of this is May 6th, so be on the lookout for that during that time frame as well. Now, before we conclude our show, I do want to show you one more interesting thing. This is the sky, how it looks on the 22nd. And so this is actually the time of the new moon. So the moon won't be out, but I'm going to actually fast forward time in the span of days and into months so I can show you kind of a transition of the sky, because we're not going to always have these objects in the same position as they are on the 22nd. So if we kind of fast forward time here, going several weeks into the next month, you notice initially that the moon went overhead during that time as I was fast forwarding time down here. We went through another lunar cycle. That's what happens when the new moon occurs. That begins a new lunar cycle, and so we went a month in advance and shown the moon over the sky. But you notice that the planets are shifting as well. And so as we go forward in time, the planets are going to continue to shift. Saturn and Jupiter are going to eventually become in late night object into early evening objects as they transition over into the southwest. But Mars is going to stay planted in the early morning. And not only that, as we go through time here, much later in the year, around October, Mars is going to be at its highest in the sky and its best position to be observed. So it'll be closer to us and it'll be more prominent in the sky. And so if you want to go out there in October and observe Mars, that is the best opportunity to do so. Around that time, though, as we continue to fast forward time now into the months, Mars is going to be more prominent in the sky again, as is Venus. And so you can see Venus over here in the eastern sky for that time frame. It's going to become a morning object, and Mars will be prominent as well until it eventually sets. So those are just a couple of things to note for our early morning sky. I hope you were able to enjoy that show, and I thank you again. Once again, my name is Christian from the Loman Planetarium as part of the Museum of Arts and Sciences, and I thank you again.